cool. Just monitor the that's all right, I'll give you an intro. We'll just wait for so the dashboard there on the left will give us our audience. Here we go. Hey everybody, we're going to start in a couple of minutes. We're just going to wait for the bulk of our audience to come online. So welcome to the Best Practice TV webinar here today. Just a couple of minutes while we just wait for our audience, and then we'll get started. All good. So you guys have been busy?
Very
busy.
Yeah. I was just rushing off from a client site this morning.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's why Guba was chasing me, saying, "Are you alright still?"
We made it. We're here.
Yeah, that's right. And early too.
That's right. Yeah. So this is I mean, I'm going to talk about this with the audience in a minute, but there you guys are.
Oh yeah. Looks professional.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'll talk about that in a minute. Excellent. Hello ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start in a couple of minutes, so get yourselves comfortable. Cup of tea, cup of coffee, glass of water. Another couple of minutes while we wait for the bulk of our audience to come online, and then we'll get started with the formal proceedings. While you're waiting for us to start, we're running live chat on the bestpracticecertification.com.au website, so you can live chat any questions. If you've come to us through our Training Academy portal, you might see a small view on YouTube button down the bottom of the screen, and you can click that button and that'll open up YouTube, and then you can post comments below the video, and we've got our lovely people out in the marketing team monitoring those comments. So we've got someone monitoring live chat outside the studio, someone monitoring our YouTube stream. Yes, I'm getting the nod. And also we've got our Facebook Messenger. So ladies and gentlemen, bear with us a couple more minutes, and then we'll start the presentation. All good, how are we going? Yep, we're good. Wait another 60 seconds and then we'll get going.
Okay, just make sure that
it doesn't ring. Yes. Yeah. So we'll turn our phones off. I'll bring them through to us and we'll answer them for you. You can also send us, or you could find us on Facebook, Best Practice Certification on Facebook, post a Facebook message, or if you have come to us through the Training Academy, there's a small button down the bottom of the screen that says View on YouTube. You can click that button. That'll take you through to YouTube, and you can comment below the window that we're broadcasting from and post any questions. So we're going to take questions at the end of the presentation, which we're quite excited by. That's the best part of this this whole exercise, is to give you guys access to us, and we can talk about all things ISO 27001. Here we go. So we've got some good numbers now on the live stream, so we'll kick off the formal proceeding. My name's Kobe Simmet. I am the CEO here at Best Practice and the regular presenter that you'd see on the YouTube channel and all of the videos. And Callan's dropped in from Content Security to talk to us. I'm not going to profess to know everything about data security, nor would I want to, but certainly where we can, we bring in the subject matter experts. So just to quickly talk about content security, we've built a relationship with these guys. They are certainly amazing in terms of the work that they do and how they look out for and look after their clients. They're one of our sponsors of our new magazine. So this is issue 2 of Certified magazine. There it is there. Sorry, Jack. With the green screen. So yeah, so that's Certified magazine. That's available for download from this Training Academy where you're watching this video. So that's a download there that's available, and you can get through that. Content Security have come on board with us. Now, the way the sponsorship works with these guys, just so we're completely open, they help us pay for the printing. So we print about 3,000 of these magazines. All the production of the magazine is all produced in-house here at Best Practice. Great articles on leadership. This month, in this quarter, we've got a great article on data security, support this webinar. So there's a couple of pages there that are really worth a read. Stuff on how to be a better manager, all the stuff that we talk about here at Best Practice, which is really exciting. Now, it is important to tell you, part of our mission and vision and passion here at Best Practice is why we exist. Best Practice is all about creating organisations that are growth focused, improvement focused, sustainable and safe. It's our passion. We're all about we're here and we exist every day to support organisations to grow. Now, we can help, and the fun ways that we do that, we've got lots of free stuff on our YouTube channel, these free webinars. We also go on site and help people, like the guys from Content Security. We find great people to talk to you. We've got lots of different fun ways, lots of it free, and some of the stuff that, that's how we earn our income. So, but our mission is to help you guys grow your organisations, manage your risks, and ultimately have organisations that are fun to work at. So there's nothing worse than working for an organisation that's not organised and it's stressful and it's not fun to go to work. So that's our passion here at Best Practice. So today we're here to talk about ISO 27001, all things content security management related. And Caelan's got a presentation, he's got a slide deck that he's going to go through, and that's going to appear behind us with this amazing technology that we've got. You're going to see his amazing body language as we go through that process. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. Couple of things. The first thing is, if you have a technology issue, if you have any streaming issues, don't panic. We are recording this presentation like all of the webinars here at Best Practice. We're going to email out the webinar link, the link to the recording, to the email address you used to register, so where you got your thank you email and all that sort of stuff. So if you have issues, if your phone rings, if you get called out to a meeting, if you have to leave your desk, if you have to leave your screen, don't panic. Just make a note of your timestamp, where you're up to, and you can come back to where you left off later on. At the end of this presentation, we'll have our live Q&A. I'll hang around for probably about an hour to an hour and a half after the presentation in our website and on Facebook, and I'll monitor the questions. I'm sure these guys will hang back for a coffee and have a quick chat before they have to dash off, and we can answer any questions. So if you don't get a question through on the live stream, don't stress. We're here to answer your questions, and we're going to be around post the webinar. Equally, don't be scared at any time to reach out to us here at Best Practice, and we can get the questions through to Content Security, or we can answer them ourselves. So for those of you that haven't heard already, we've got the live chat facility on our website at bestpracticecertification.com.au, and you can live chat with one of our team. They're just outside the studio here, sitting on the website waiting to answer any questions. They'll bring any comments or questions through to us so we can answer them. And also, if you can find us on Facebook, so if you've got a couple of devices, you're sitting at your desk and you've got your mobile device, your phone or your tablet handy, you can find us on Facebook. Send us a Facebook message, or equally, there's a little tiny button down the side of this viewing screen or the bottom of this viewing screen, depending on the device you're watching, that says View on YouTube, and you can post comments below. So we love to hear your comments. We're looking at a tiny little webcam doing this presentation for you. But you guys are got us on the big screen, so please post your comments. Even if it's a hello, we'll give you a shout out. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let Caelan get into this great presentation, where we're all going to learn more about ISO 27001, how to approach it, what's involved. And so maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you get involved in, and then get stuck into it. And I'm going to go and monitor the website outside the office, and we'll get those questions answered. So get your questions in. If anything comes up in the presentation, just text in that question straight away, and we'll cover it at the end. Thanks, mate.
Yep,
thanks for coming.
No worries.
And I look forward to your presentation.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay. My name is Caelan San. I'm with Content Security as a principal consultant. I've been in the security industry for about 20 years now. Started off in the IT audit field and moving into information security in the latter part of my career. I'm sure that you're all very excited to learn more about information security and how to manage information security. And if you've not heard about it, what ISO 27001 is all about. So let's go on to the next slide, and we have a look at the thing about information security. The question is, what is information security about, and why do you really want to even look at ISO 27001? For those who are not accustomed to what this means, just a quick view about what information security management system is all about, and that's in short ISMS. Now, for people who are in the information security field, information security and the managing of information security, I'm sure you do know that there are a wide best practices around as to how you can actually improve or manage information security. And ISO 27001 is one of those standards. And why we are actually promoting ISO 27001 is because it's one of the well-recognized, globally recognized standards where it provides you from an end-to-end view as to how you can manage information security. Now, a lot of the other standards that are around, what they do is that they provide you with very prescriptive view about how you implement controls to manage information. But what they don't do is to provide you with how to actually implement a framework in place to then implement controls. So let's have a look at information in itself. What we like to introduce is the concept of information that you look at from an organization-wide perspective. So what is actually your crown jewels? Everybody talk about crown jewels. So in every organization, information is an important part of the enterprise. When we're talking about information, we start looking at what are the information that you're receiving from your customers, from your clients. What are you doing with them? Using them, processing them, managing them. And the other thing that we then look at is that, are you storing it? Where are you storing it? How are you actually managing information that you stored? How protected are those information? So when we try to understand that and understanding a business in itself, there are many components in a business. So we can start looking at right at the top, look at the CEO. To the CEO, what does it mean to him or her in terms of an information? What are their information needs? And then if you look at the next thing is that, thank you for that, and looking at in terms of a COO, so looking at operations, what is information to a COO? Why is information important? So while at a CEO perspective, I'm very interested to know at how are you protecting my brand? What happens if there's an information breach? And then from a CEO's perspective, how am I using those information in terms of making sure that I have seamless, effective, and efficient processes in place? And then looking at the next category of people who will look at information. Next slide. In looking from a CFO's perspective, what do I expect, or a chief privacy officer perspective? What am I looking at from an information? What do I need to protect? So for organizations who deal a lot with personal information and personal information that are sensitive in nature, now that would be the core interest of a chief privacy officer. And then the next category of people would be the CIOs. Now this is a new category of group of people in an organization specifically looking at information. In the past, there's a lot of talk about data, there's a lot of talk about information, but nobody actually ever thought about what do they need to actually protect information. So now we've created a whole new role for a chief information officer. And as a chief information officer, what you would be interested in is how do I actually gather everybody in the organization and look at information and then looking at how we protect them. So what we're trying to introduce is the concept of looking at information as an information life cycle in itself, and how it means, what it means to different people in an organization. And from there, we'll start to look at what is the value of that information to you, and hence why we need to protect them. So one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves when we look at protecting information is, what is the value of that information to each person in the organization? This next one. Thank you. Next one. Right, so let's start looking at what we call Information Security Management System, the ISMS. As I said earlier, ISMS is actually a terminology that we use to basically mean management of information. And there are many methodologies out there to help you do that. So having a ISMS in place, it actually ensures that you would have management commitment into managing of information. So we're taking the concept of information security from a top-down approach, getting your board level people involved, and then getting senior management involved, operational level people involved, and then finally at the operational level on how to implement some of those controls to protect information. So when we look at information and we start treating them like a business assets, just like any other assets that you have in an organization that brings a meaning and a value which has a critical impact on the organization, when we start treating information in that same way, then we start to look at the value of having to protect those information. So having an ISMS in place, once we understand what the information is that we need to protect, it provides a systematic approach towards managing information using a risk-based approach. Oh, I haven't finished the previous one. Yeah. So in terms of the way I've just explained it, what happens then is that we then take an organizational view. Because we've taken it from a top-down approach, we're actually taking an organizational view to managing information security. Now, the important thing to note about that is that information security managing is not a revolution. It is an evolution, and hence it is actually a journey. So we can't actually manage information security in a couple of months or even a year. And often when we help organizations to improve a state of maturity, it often takes 3-4 years to do. So as a result of that, we can't actually say we want to implement security and then kind of pull it out of the hat and say, let's improve security. What we need to do is that, because it does take a long time to improve on the state of your current security, we look at information security management as a project, like any other projects that you have. So to get the importance of the commitment of top management, and you start taking ISMS seriously, and to start it off as a project, so some of the things that we need to think about is that how do we get a project going? If you press into the next one, thank you. So as any other projects that we've started in an organization, we first need to actually set up the project itself. So when we set up the project, we need to first identify what is the business requirements for a project. So what are the commitments that we want to put into the project? What sort of resources that you want. So ISMS project is no different from any other projects that you do. There will always be constraints. The constraints of resources to put in a particular project, and at the same time you want them to be involved in your business as usual, your BAU activities. Now as a result of that, often you will find that if you don't treat ISMS as a project, you will tend to end up with undeterminate ending of a project. So it is really important that if we were to take ISMS as a project, we need to then set up all the rules as you would do in a project, in terms of defining what the project means to each person, who are the interested parties, who are the stakeholders into this, what are the risks, what are the threats, and what are the resources that you need, what are the skills that you need. All this needs to be identified, it needs to be measured, so that then you can have a successful measurement of a project as it goes along. And next one, and another one, thank you. So by setting up such a precedence in terms of treating ISMS as a project, you actually introduce a culture and awareness of information security. You provide an avenue for introducing ownership of information security. So by treating them as a project, getting everybody involved, when you identify the stakeholders within a project, that's when we start the project rolling and doing all the briefings, so that you could actually cascade down what it means to have information security and what it means about information values to each category of people that you get involved in that project in itself. Now, once all those have been defined, the most important thing obviously is to be able to communicate those values to everyone on that project. And hence, that's where you get the concept about governance. So by having a structured approach to introducing ISMS as a project, we actually then introduce the concept of governance into information security. Now, once we have that already set up, the next phase obviously to look at is how do we plan for the ISMS itself. So within the project, we need to identify what we normally call as a context establishment, which we will go on a little bit further on later part, is that we need to plan for the ISMS to understand who are the people that is involved in the project. What are the information security objectives? What are the risk acceptance criteria? So that you can actually move from the planning into the implementation stage. And then following from that will be the next part where you need to build in measures of what we call key performance indices for you to be able to track how well you are actually moving against what you've set out right at the earlier part where you have defined what your objectives are. Now basically, if you look at that as a whole, that kind of gives you a feel that, well, ISMS is a project after all. So in the beginning, I started saying that ISMS is actually a process of managing information security. Now, there are many standards out there, and the ISMS standards 27001, the latest version is 2013, it provides you a whole suite of a framework as how do you actually manage information security. And then 27002 provides you with detailed descriptions of what those controls are, and within 27002 there are actually 14 control domains. But what the 27001 is different from all the other standards. So you could name NIST, you could name SANS, or even some people look at COVID from ISACA to look as a guidance in how to implement controls. Now basically all these standards that I've just mentioned, they are methods of controls that you can implement. So they are actually very much at the controls level. 27001 on the other hand actually sits on top of that control level to say that, well, for me to be able to implement controls, I first need to have a framework in place that will take me from the start, as in the project that we looked at earlier, to define what your information security objective is, to define what the risk and the threats are to the organization, to define who the interested parties are for the information that you're trying to protect, up until the point where you actually look at implementing those controls, which you could use the controls which have been provided by ISO 27002, which they call the controls within the Annex A, or you can then start to use with more prescriptive controls. So as I said before, you can use NIST, you can use OFs for development, you can use COVID, and even for those who are government agencies, you could actually then refer back to the ASD's Information Security Manual. Next. So how do we go about implementing the ISO 27001? So the very first step is to define the context establishment. So in that is to first be able to understand what the organization is all about. Where are your key businesses or core businesses areas? Without understanding what that is, you will not be able to find out what it is that you need to protect. So different organizations will have different values for information. So it's important for you to first identify what are the organizational businesses, and then what are the information that you are actually collecting, and then what are you going to do with the information, and hence the value of that information to you. And then from there to look at what are the needs and the expectations of interested parties. So in today's age, many companies are actually looking at outsourcing of the managing of their information. Now, outsourcing of the management of the information does not necessarily mean that it's the outsourcing of the ownership of that information. So important for an organization when you look at what you are trying to protect is to understand what is the expectations of those requirements. And then
I'll just wait a moment to see.
yeah, sure.
It's back up.
The streaming stopped, or
Yeah, the stream. We're back on.
good. I'm not sure where I stopped though. Leadership, but should I
Go
just
back to
start?
leadership, yeah.
Start it again? Or?
Yep, we can start again.
Yep. Okay, in terms of getting leadership commitment into this project, and which is why I earlier said that it's really important to take ISMS as a project, because to ensure that you get the traction that you need, to ensure that it gets a successful implementation at the end of the day, it's really important to get the leadership's view into this. So one of the ways that we've actually done that in terms of implementing that is to define organizational roles and responsibility. We start creating or establishing and defining what an information security organizational structure would look like, to make sure that the information security officer have a prominent role within the organization, and then outlining what those the responsibilities of everyone within the information security organizational structure. By that method, where you then have them signed off at the very top level, that's where we actually said that that's how you get leadership's commitment right from the top in itself. And that's really important if you want to see a successful implementation of an ISMS. And then the next part from that is then to look at how do we then start implementing some of the concepts of information security. Now, where we said earlier, 27001 is actually a risk-based approach into managing information security. Hence, obviously, a big part of that is in terms of planning out how do we actually manage the ISMS as a risk-based approach. So in this part of the implementation is about coming up with a risk management framework. It's about coming up with risk acceptance criteria. So to what extent are you acceptance of a particular risk in the organization? And to what level do you want to make sure that actions are actually undertaken? And the other thing also about risk management is that it allows you to prioritize on the controls that you want to put in place. So ultimately, what a risk management framework should be able to assist an organization to do is to filter down from close to 114 controls potentially that you need to implement to perhaps just half of that, depending on the prioritization, depending on the maturity of the organization, depending on what the risk acceptance criteria is. So all these needs to be planned out before you actually then start that process. And similarly, like any other projects implementation that you have, once you've got all your plan in place, that means having a context of the organization, understanding where information is, the value of the information, who are interested in it, having an organizational structure in place, plan out a risk management framework, and then the next thing you need to look at, who are the people who will be involved in that project? Who do I need to have in this project? So obviously for information security project, you need to have people who are, if not well versed with information security, but to a certain extent would understand the implications of a risk. Now, the importance of that is that when you do a risk management process in itself, the ultimate game of it is to be able to understand those risks that have been identified, to understand the risk that you are accepting for either not accepting, not doing anything about a particular risk, or to implement controls to that, you need to sign that off. So it is important that whoever is in those roles, the information security roles, which are defined at the outstart when you did the organizational structure, is to make sure that they are at least have a basic understanding of what information security is and what risk means to the organization. And finally, is the final part of it is actually to operationalize the whole process in itself. So in this initial phase of the roadmap is to first do the setup of the expectations, and then to plan out what are the frameworks that you need to have in place, and then the next step is obviously to operationalize the implementation in itself. And to the next one. So towards the end of that implementation, so on a yearly basis, what needs to happen is that one of the things that needs to be looked into is to build what we call key risk indicators or key performance indices to enable the monitoring of the project in itself, to look at whether you are behind time, or maybe there are certain risks that have been highlighted during the risk management process phase that needs to be brought up and immediate action needs to be taken, or are we actually coming to a point where our budgets have not been enough and you need to revisit that as well. So the monitoring and the measurement phase of it allows you to manage the project to ensure that you get a successful return at the end of the day. And once you've actually put all this in place, you need to have an assessment of how well you are doing in accordance to what you have actually planned to do. Next one. And then the next one. So we're going down to the actual each one by depth at the moment. So in terms of what we call a security governance phase of it, so we have a couple of phases in which we implement an ISMS. We've broken it down to content security have actually broken it down to 3 major phases. So the first one being security governance, the second one is about risk management, and the third one is about control implementation. So the 3 phases are actually taking through an organization to all the 10 steps that you saw from the slides before. So in the context establishment part of security governance, the business aspects of the organization is really important, because we need to understand what the business goals are. So ultimately what we need to do is to understand if the objective of the organization, what is the core businesses, why are they doing what they're doing, so that when we look at information security is similar with IT. We are supposed to be enablers for the organization. So understanding where the organization is going, what is the objective of the organization, that will give us an idea of what your information security objective is. So what is an information security objective? So often for an organization, information security objective could be brand reputation damage. Another information security objective could be a lack of security implementation in the organization. So there are a number of information security objectives that you could define right up front, and all these information security objectives ultimately meets the business goals of the organization. The other thing that we always forget is that we always talk about losses. When we think about what our information security objectives are, we often think of them in risk, and we always interpret risk as losses to the organization. But what we always forget as well, risk has the other element of it, where we need to look at it from an opportunistic perspective. So what's the opportunity that you can get a positive outcome from actually implementing information security? So often that opportunity comes in that if you have an ISMS in place, or if you certify yourself against an ISO 27001, you'll find that you will suddenly catapult your organization to a higher level than most of your competitors. It puts you at a competitive edge, because at this day and age where information is really very important, and if you are not protected, then from a business perspective, you will find that people will tend to start questioning whether I should do business with you, because a lot of personal information and sensitive information are actually collected when you're doing business. So when you have an information security system in place, then it puts you at a better competitive advantage than most of your competitors. And the other thing about opportunities is that often when you come to implementing controls to manage a risk, you will find that part of that process includes redefining processes, or maybe looking at upskilling of people. So as a result of which, you will find that the effectiveness of the operations would be improved. The concerns that we have here, these are the information security objectives that I have mentioned before. So some of these are just examples, but in our dealings with a lot of our clients, we find that these are very commonly the main issues that people face with, and obviously information breach is one of them, especially now where the Privacy Commissioner has updated the Privacy Act to include the mandatory notification of an information breach. So at the top of every organization's mind at the moment is that it's not about if I get breached, but when I get breached, how do I actually, what are the steps that I actually need to take? Now, bearing in mind that often when we talk about implementing an information security platform or a framework, it is often about reasonable steps that you undertake to protect your information. It's not absolute, because obviously there is no such thing as an absolute information security, but it is about having reasonable measures or reasonable steps undertaken to protect those information. And hence that's why if you were to have an ISMS in place, this would provide you with that so-called reasonable measures to protect your information. Why is it important again to talk about interested parties? The information that you receive, it's obviously, in the past we've always talked about what is the value of information to the organization. But if you would have noticed of late with all the breaches that's been going on around the world, often now it is no longer about what is the value of information to the organization, but now it is about what is the value of information to the person who has an interest in it. So it is always good to start looking at who are the people that are connected to your organization. Who are these people that would have an interest in my information, in the organization's information? So it is only by looking at the whole range of interested parties are we able to start looking at risk from a holistic view rather than just ad hoc. Just keep going. Yep. Go through the whole thing. Yep. So basically, this next slide is a culmination of all that we've just talked about in all the last previous slides. So if you look at the first left side of the slide, it's all talking about the governance as to how do you set up a governance. In many organizations, there's a part there that says steering committee. Now, many organizations may not have the ability to have a steering committee, but it doesn't also stop an organization to have at least a forum or a group of people that brings together the minds of business and brings it to mind the people of a technical perspective to talk about what is the risk to the organization, to look at if there is that risk, how are we going to manage that risk, and how are we measuring our risk, and where do we sit, what is our maturity posture. So in setting up that, and then to the right hand side of the screen, you will see that these are the people where the roles and responsibility, these are the people that are really important in the setup of the organization. So in the roles that you have, from those who are actually having an oversight of security, which is on the left side of the screen, to the people who are then responsible for managing, for enacting the security for the organizations. So the information security manager will provide the view of the requirements of security for the organization, and through leadership, the thought from leadership will have the tone from the top of the expectations of information security, which is then coming through the information security manager that establishes that these are the things that we need to do to meet the expectations of management. And then the process owners are the people who will then be responsible for the risk that comes through the organization. So what does that mean? So process owner has the responsibility to make sure that the measures that they are putting in place are able to actually mitigate that risk of any threat to the organizations. But where those threats are not mitigated, then it is also the process owner's responsibility to make sure that there are alternate or mitigating controls that could actually manage those risks. And obviously, we can't forget about every employee in the organization. It is the responsibility of every employee of the organization to be aware and also to know what action to take in the event that there is an information security breach. So that brings us now to risk management. So now that we've actually set up the platform of where information security should be heading, we have already set up a team of people that should be looking into information security. We now look at a risk-based approach towards managing information security. So from the first phase, we call the first phase of security governance, we have actually said, this is my risk management framework, and this is and these are risk acceptance criteria which have been signed off by the leadership team. So based on that, we now look at how do we actually manage that risk. So using ISO 31000, and I believe that across almost every other standard, they always refer back to ISO 31000 as well. It then provides you with the ability to come up with a framework to manage risk. Now, within the information security risk management framework, then you have your identification of your risk, your assessment of your risk, your evaluation of your risk, and then the treatment of your risk. Now, all that seems quite easy when you put it, okay, it makes sense. But what we need to look now at, how do we actually come up with the measurements that will enable us first to assess, and how then are we able to treat your risk. Now, in many organizations, there is an enterprise risk management framework, or even if you do not have one, then it is always good to actually have a risk management framework in place. Now, where your organization actually already have an enterprise risk management framework, what we need to do is that taking the information security objective, which we have already outlined in the first phase in security governance, looking at the information security objective, align that back to the enterprise risk management framework. And then from there, we look at all the elements within the risk management framework as to populating how do you measure risk. So obviously, in risk assessment itself, you have the likelihood and the impact of a risk eventuating, and that should come out from your enterprise risk management framework. So how we always have said that every IT objective should be aligned to the corporate objective. In the same way, we say information security objectives needs to be aligned back to the enterprise risk management framework. So we go to the next. Yep. So from the information security risk management, if you look at the very first point, it says context establishment. Now, you would have noticed that a lot of this would have been already done upfront during the security governance phase. and that's why we are able to divide them the way we do. So the output, I should say, the output from the context establishment then flows into this particular phase of information security risk management itself. So within the risk management framework, aside from the alignment of the to the enterprise risk management framework, we need to have the understanding of risk governance around that. So who are the people who need to be involved within the risk management framework? We bring in people from the process, the business side. We bring in people from IT, because if we look at information security, we're not just talking about IT security, we're talking about information security. So in an organization where there is from the time that you collect your information, there are some manual representation of information to some digitalization of that information, then it brings to cause that we look at both the manual information as well as IT side of the information. So when we talk about risk governance, we talk about bringing together the business component of a business as well as the IT component of the business to look at how we manage risk. So when we start to divide the boundaries of information security, we invite both the business people, whom we normally call as process owners, and we bring in the people of IT, which we normally call them enablers for or support team for the business, and we start running through the risk assessment with both teams. Now, coming out from that, we have to have an idea about how do we actually then interpret those risks. So the process owner obviously will understand what risk is to them. They will be able to have an understanding of the process. For you to be able to look at risk assessment, we must first understand what is your risk scenarios. So what does risk scenario means? And risk scenario is something that you can actually get out of COVID, the understanding out of the COVID practices as well. Risk scenario, basically what I like to call it storytelling. So from understanding a process within an organization, you will be able to then understand what controls that you have in place. Where there is a lack of those controls, then what risk is presented from a lack of those controls. So from having identified a scenario of a risk, it becomes easier then to start understanding what is the likelihood of that risk actually even happening. And then what is the impact if it actually does eventuate. Without having an understanding of what risk scenario is, it becomes quite difficult for you to then identify what is the likelihood of it actually happening. And then from having an understanding of that, the next thing that we need to have an understanding about is how do you then measure, to what extent do you think a particular risk is low, what do you view as a risk is medium or high. So this is where a risk matrix table is really important. So how do we define a risk matrix table? And then coming back again to what we have obtained in the first stage of it is to look at what is defined in the enterprise risk management framework. So from there, you are able to then look at the identification of when a risk is low, is where an impact is low, or the likelihood of it happening being low as well. So what is important about a risk matrix table? The risk matrix table actually would tell you to what extent it becomes justifiable for you to actually implement a control. So if a control has got very low risk to an organization, it really doesn't make much sense for you to put in a lot of money into implementing a particular control. And vice versa, if a risk is really high, even though the likelihood of it actually happening is low, you want to put some controls in place, and it's justifiable for you to put money into implementing those controls. And which is why we are saying is that why using a risk-based approach to managing information security makes more sense than just trying to implement security ad hocly across the organization. Because in many organizations where you're trying to to run budgets where you're trying to fight for resources, you're trying to fight for costing of money, you will find that in this type of situations, it is always good that you're able to prioritize your risk, so that you can say that these are the things that I can do today, but these are the things that I can wait until later for us to do. Now, once we've run through the risk assessment and we've identified what are the things that we need to do now and what we need to do later, so what we need to do then for each one of those risks that you've identified is to look at what are the measurements that you can then put in place to look at how successful is a particular control that you have implemented. So for example, if we are saying that a particular control is to put a measurement to measure how many security incidents has happened in this period of time. So if we have measurements to say that the number of incidents that happen seems to have gone lower by the implementation of a particular control, then you can then report to management to say that it is a successful ISMS implementation, or sorry, a successful controls implementation. And from that, the reporting that needs to go to management provides a close of the loop to say that you have continuous improvement into your processes in the organization. So at the end of the day, when we talk about information security, we can put in a lot of processes, we can put in a lot of frameworks. Ultimately, whether an ISMS is successful or not, aside from the measurements that you see at the end of the tunnel, is actually about the culture that we have created in terms of how do everyone in the organization view information security. Do I actually understand information security to the extent that every time I say, for example, every time I leave my table, I got to make sure that I've actually locked out my screen, to really actually doing it all the time that I actually walk out of my table, I actually lock out the screen. So a lot of the time, awareness is good, but we have also found out that along with awareness, there is always the contributory factor about the culture that you inculcate in everyone in the organization. So ultimately, why we do ISMS is that not only to improve the processes, to increase and heighten your information security, but at the end of the day, you want to create an awareness of information security across the organization. Yeah, it's simple.
Awesome. I'm going to come join you.
Thank you.
What's going on with that chroma key, mate? Look at that. Fantastic. So thanks for joining us, mate.
My pleasure.
I just want to quick shout out to the people that have been providing comments there on the YouTube channel. So if you are viewing through the Training Academy, there is that little button down the bottom there that you can click view live on YouTube. So go right ahead and post any comments. June's there waiting. I've just come back into the studio to close out this presentation. So thanks for joining us. Really informative. I think the one thing that I picked up the most from the presentation, and I've read the 27001 standard, and we've talked lots about ISMS, and I've done my own presentations. But for me, hearing you speak has been really quite good. They are, I guess, at the end of the day, quality management principles or security principles. So. Yeah. And the same challenges exist, whether it's your OH&S or whether it's your security, your ISMS. Just the example you're talking about there about, ensuring that someone does something before they get up from their desk, locks down their machine. Matt, the marketing manager from Content Security, has been sitting outside the studio with me. We've been talking about, he's got these little tiny laptop camera covers. Little webcam cover. So if you want a free webcam cover, Matt's going to provide those. I've just dropped him in it. So, so Content Security got this great little branded sticky little camera cover that goes over the camera on your webcam. You could probably put one on your phone as well, I presume.
I'm not sure whether it fits onto the phone. It's a really big,
yeah. So, but you could do it, so it's sticky. So, yeah. So the guys from Content Security have got some great stuff. I've just brought in a couple of their pieces of collateral, which Jack's going to just play with the control panel there to get rid of the green for us. Sorry mate, is that me? What about if I do this? There we go. How's that?
Ah.
So there's a couple of brochures there for you. There's a service catalogue on enterprise security services. There's a service catalogue on governance, risk and compliance. And there's one there on security assurance. So please post a comment. We'll get these out to you wherever you are in the world. We know we've got lots of people watching from around the world. We'll get these either through to you as a PDF via email really fast this afternoon, or we can get them through to you hard copy in the post. So all you need to do in the comments next to this video or on Facebook here at Best Practice is just write yes please, and then we'll go find you. We'll find your email address in our database, and we'll get that stuff out to you. The other thing I'll just quickly remind everybody, the new magazine's out from Certified. There it is there. That's it. Our amazing sponsors there on the back, Content Security, and they've come in today. Thank you, Kaylin. But everything today has been brought to you by the Best Practice Training Academy. That's it here right behind us, and that's our learning portal. So the Training Academy generates the revenue that funds these free webinars. I believe that the marketing team here at Best Practice have got an offer for you today. It's going to be a discount on one of our courses. This is the sales pitch that comes at the end of this free stuff. But if you've got questions, please drop those questions through to the comments section of the YouTube channel. What do we got, Jack? Anything? Any questions? Not at this stage. Hang on, what's that one? Yes, please. All right. Thanks, Campbell. We'll get that stuff out to you. We'll find your email address on the portal, and if you've got any questions, anyone else has got any further questions, so yes, just type a yes, please there on the comments section, and we can get you or send us an email. We can get you that pack of stuff from Content Security. We'll get you a copy of the magazine from Certified. We'll get that in the mail to you guys. I've got a couple of questions.
Yep, sure. So
I'm the CEO here at Best Practice.
Yep.
I've got 31 people here in our team at the moment, and they're traveling all over the country. Mm-hmm. In terms of, say, everybody's got an iPhone, for example. Yes. So in our business, we supply them. So we supply everybody with an iPhone. We manage those devices with our Apple control panel. So Apple gives us a central system, so we can remotely, disconnect them and that sort of stuff.
So like MDM.
Yeah, it's some sort of, I don't know the technical term. Okay. I'm just the guy that signs the checks, right?
Okay.
What should I be concerned about as the CEO here at Best Practice with my team having iPhones? They've got access to the email system, they've got access to the document system, they've got access to the CRM, yep. They've got their own part of the accounting system, so that where they lodge their through a financial system to do their annual leave and their pay slips and that sort of stuff. What are the sorts of things that you've heard about with iPhones?
Well, I'm not starting with iPhones, but I've asked a few in the industry, and at the moment iPhone is the one that most people go for because of the way they've kind of locked everybody out of the arena of introducing things. Yes. So because very well, you can't put in your apps until it actually goes through
the
Apple
Store.
Apple. So which is why it makes it a little bit more control as compared to Android devices. But what is good about the MDM is it's because you know that you potentially will be hacked anyway. Mm-hmm. But what is important is that if the data and all is not on the phone, but it's on a content in itself, then what is important is to cut that, and that's what the MDM allows you to do. Yep. So once you're able to do that, now the only problem is obviously then you need to protect yourself from your employees as well, because you need to at least within a contract to tell the employees that we provide you this. You actually have probably some personal information that you actually have in there. So when you actually cut off using an MDM,
you lose everything.
You could potentially lose everything.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, here at Best Practice, the personal stuff they'll lose is all the pictures of their kids. And that's reality, right? That's the mothers that are working for us, and particularly not so much the dads because none of them take pictures, but yeah, definitely the personal stuff's not. It's not crazy stuff like money or any of that sort of stuff. It's just that they live and breathe with that phone, and it's their family life. So it's not like it's top secret information. Certainly not here at Best Practice. In terms of when we talk, let's talk now more about ISMS, so the management system itself. As the CEO, what do you think? From me or anyone out there that's going back to talk to their leadership team or those sorts of things after this presentation, what do you think in the system side of things? would be your favourite parts of ISO 27001 or a system that I should be aware of? Like, you know, is it the policy? Is it the monitoring and measurement? Like, is it a particular report? Is it the results of internal audits? What sorts of things do you think are most important?
I like the way that you said that, but I'm hoping that everybody who has heard this will know that it's a framework rather than and a process, and not specifically a system.
That's right.
And I think what has not got through in the past is that when everybody talks about ISMS, guess what they do? They say it's an IT issue.
No.
And which is where information security has not actually gotten a lot of the traction that it should have. So from what we need to do is the recognition that information security is important for the organization is to actually get leadership involved in that. So the leadership team itself need to say, I want to put this on my agenda. So what that really means is that I'm putting money into it. I'm making sure that my resources are there to actually do that, and then that's when it starts the ball rolling, because that is the most critical part of actually the ISMS in itself.
Absolutely.
Without that, then nothing else would actually happen.
Absolutely. And I can honestly say I'm committed to it, and part of our process with, say, cloud-based systems here at Best Practice, and the way we manage it, we can wipe a device very quickly. So if we physically lose any of our devices, we can wipe it really quickly. Some of the facilities we've got switched on with our cloud software with a different side of things is if there's a login, if there's a successful login to a device or to a cloud account from a different device. So the cloud accounts we have for some of our programs acknowledge the devices that are using the system frequently, and if there's a device that doesn't use it. So say for example, an employee logs into one of their cloud accounts for, say, their email or something else from home computer, we get an alert to say there's been a login, and we're looking to see if it's the same device. So the unique for us, for me as the CEO, is knowing that each employee might have 3 devices, so we're talking 90 devices, and I know that if a 91 device logs into the system, so there's that side of it. So that's some simple stuff from a systems perspective. I'm asking for those sorts of reports. I'm asking for that data. I'm asking for that intel. Yes, I'm committed to a budget. I think it's important to acknowledge that you can't just save money or get the cheapest price for the save money and the cheapest price perspective, because a lot of people say, I'm not going to do that, that's too expensive. But expensive is only expensive when you compare it to something else that's the same. Does that make sense?
Yes, it is. I think information security is at a space where it's quite similar to where IT really was in the past, where everybody talks about return on investments. Right? Now, in information security, return on investment is something really hard to define, because the thing is that it's like an insurance.
Yeah, absolutely.
You put a lot of things in place and you go, what if? But where it justifies in itself is, which is why if you take information security as a process, so in the middle of implementing a heightened sense of information security posture, what you've done is you've improved processes, which brings in efficiency. So, and you've actually also looked at improving the way security is being managed. So in that sense, you actually immediately see an improvement in terms of the investment that you put in your budget. So not so much of dollars and cents, but actually of the opportunities you get out of that. Yeah, right.
So I've got 2 mobile phones here. They've all got questions on them. Okay, they're the same question. Thank you, Campbell. So it's, do you think you will be wrapping accreditation with IMS certification? The simple answer to that question is no and yes. No to the first one is that certification, in its true sense of the term here at Best Practice, is an external third-party auditor coming in and certifying that there's a system in place. Campbell, if you ask me one more question about accreditation, I'd just like to dig a bit deeper with that around, are you talking about individual accreditation, or are you talking about accreditation of a different format? So we use the term certification, meaning we would send in an auditor. So for example, content security might help you map out your system, get organized, put things in place. Then the auditors from Best Practice would come through and do that third-party audit. So it's really about just looking at that being typically certification in place of maybe accreditation of an individual in terms of their skill set, competencies, those sorts of things. So, but yes, with IMS certification, yes, we would be wrapping 27001. I'm just rereading your question. Yes, 27001 would be integrated into an integrated management system where you would have quality, safety, environment, and information security, all part of your generic risk management system, if that makes sense. And that's certainly where I would come from a CEO's perspective, how I run my organisation. I look at all of these things in the same framework. So we have all the standards, including 27001, talk about management review. We do those management reviews here at Best Practice quarterly. You can jump onto my LinkedIn account, so find Kobe Simon on LinkedIn and click follow. I posted a video last week of our management review, which was last Monday, week ago. So Jack's edited up a video of us actually having our quarterly strategic planning management review that follows those ISO standards. So yes, we would bundle it together. Yes, we'd look at an integrated assessment and sort of go through that process. So you want to have the integrated risk framework. I think just to pick up on a point you made about about hard to determine return on investment, I think a sharp leader and a smart leader like myself would figure that out pretty quickly, because I'm thinking about it from a productivity perspective. I'm thinking about it, stopping the bus. So this, my business, that can cost, up to $10,000 an hour to run. And so when we talk about, for example, a threat, not just data being stolen and misused, but just say a information security system, the information is corrupted. So, the data could be, the information that we've got could be corrupted, the information we've got could be stolen and used somewhere else, or it could be accidentally lost. If it brings this organisation to a grinding halt, it starts to cost the organisation $10,000 an hour. And while the organisation's out of action, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, we're talking $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. That's this example with Best Practice with my company. Content security and the relationship with RSA, those are, they're all companies. We work in this space, but I'm just using our own companies as an example. We can't afford it. So I'm just speaking from my experience. I invest in this because it's preventing my organisation coming to a grinding halt, as much as I invest in OH&S, because I've got to keep my people safe. If my people hurt themselves and stop working, it costs $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. So these are, for me, the ROI is around my confidence that we're going to sustainably operate into the future. And I think that's the thing to speak to your leadership teams about and open that conversation and start that conversation, looking for any of the risks that are going to bring the organisation to a grinding halt.
Well, most definitely is, and I think that's where we started with the very first slide, into understanding the value of that information and how it actually differs from one person to another in those leadership team.
Absolutely.
So all of them coming together, and then at the end of the day, it's about balancing security with your operations. So not forgetting that information security at the end of the day is supposed for you to manage confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Absolutely.
So what you just said just now is just spot on the mark, because availability is one of the main things in terms of protecting information.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
It's been great. So find Kalen on LinkedIn. We'll pop his details in some of the comments below these videos. Find me on LinkedIn. My name's Kobe Simon. I'm the CEO here at Best Practice. Find me on LinkedIn and hit the follow button or hit the connect button. I love interacting with people, and message me on LinkedIn. So a quick shout out here to the Training Academy. This is a good screenshot of it here, right behind us. That's where all our courses are, and you can download and do that learning. We've got some subscriptions happening there now where you can get bundle deals. And I was also talking to the marketing team this morning about posting some of the previous webinars we've run. So I think this is webinar number 14 in our monthly series that's been consistently running. So we're getting some good, it's been over a year now that we've been able to get these things through. So it's quite the good celebration. The webinar last month, if you caught that, I wasn't even here. We ran that half pre-recorded, which was quite exciting. I couldn't be here for the event, so we're getting some good traction. If there's a particular webinar topic that you want, send me a message on LinkedIn. I also like to hear what you loved about the webinar. If there was something that you loved about this webinar, then let me know, and we'll do more of what everyone loves. And less of what people don't love. But the last thing is, don't forget why Best Practice exists. We're really here to help you guys. It's part of this process, part of the process to help you grow and develop and improve and look after your information security. That's what today was all about. It's part of that whole strategy with keeping improving every day. So check us out on all of the social media platforms. Jack, have we got any more slides? I think that's probably pretty much it. There we go. There's all our social media handles. Jack will move us out of the way. Pop us down there in the corner. And thank the guys from Content Security. Check them out. They've got a great website. The guy that looks after and improves the website, if you've got any comments, they actually got a new website. They want some feedback. So if you wouldn't mind jumping across to Content Security and giving them some feedback on their website, contact Matt through the Contact Us page. Got a great team over there, everything IT related. I don't know a huge amount about it. I'm just a bit of a boffin when it comes to that stuff. But check out Content Security, check out the Best Practice website, and look out for the webinars we've got coming towards you over the next couple of months. They're in the back of Certified magazine. Those people that said, yes, please, I'll get you magazines and brochures and all that sort of stuff sent out. So anyone else who wants stuff, just press yes, please in the comments, or send an email, reply email to your registration. So this has all been recorded. We'll get that recording out to you via email over the next couple of hours. Any questions or comments you've got, reach out to us here. And I'm going to stay near the Best Practice website. So we've got the live chat facility there at bestpracticecertification.com.au. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time right here on Best Practice TV. Bye.